These two cables are not the same. They look identical, but don't let them fool you. Have you ever wondered why your smartphone, which had that turbo fast charging feature, charges so slowly when you use a cable you've borrowed from a buddy? Or why your super fast memory card doesn't actually transfer data to your laptop that quickly? Then you've come to the right place, because today I'm going to explain why that is. Hi, my name's Jay, and I shoot pictures. So, how is it possible that a €5 cable can charge my laptop at 100 watts, but a €40 cable cannot? On the other hand, the €40 cable transfers data super fast, while the €5 cable takes forever. They are both USB-C cables. They should be the same because a cable's just a cable, right? No. USB-C simply describes the connector shape, not what the cable itself is capable of. USB has undergone many different updates and versions over the years. USB 2.0, for example, was introduced back in 2000. Accordingly, it has a data transfer rate of just 480 megabits per second, which is very slow by today's standards. By the way, if you are confused because you have a cable that's supposed to transfer, say, 480 megabits per second, but your screen only shows 40 or 50 megabyte per second, it doesn't mean your cable is broken, everything is working fine. That's because megabit and megabyte aren't the same thing. This all comes from the IT world of bits and bytes. Just remember that 8 bits equal 1 byte, which is why you always have to divide megabit per second by 8. That gives you the actual megabytes you can transfer per second at most. So if your internet connection has a speed of 100 megabit per second or mbit per second, you can download data at a maximum rate of 12.5 megabyte per second. But back to the USB standards. USB 2.0 can transfer data at 480 megabit per second. USB 3.0 then made a huge leap and already delivers up to 5 gigabit per second. Then came USB 3.1 with 10 gigabit, USB 3.2 with 20 gigabit, and now we have USB 4 with 40 gigabit, and the latest version of USB 4 is version 2.0 with up to 80 gigabit per second. You may also come across the term Thunderbolt from time to time. This is a specialized version that also uses the USB standard and was developed by Intel and Apple. It's characterized by exceptionally fast data transfer and additional features. Thunderbolt is essentially the ultra version of USB-C. So much for what these cables can transfer in terms of data, but what does this have to do with charging my smartphone? With the introduction of the USB-C connector, it became possible not only to transfer data, but also to deliver significantly more power in watts and even video signals. It essentially became the one-size-fits-all cable. However, there's a problem here. While the USB standard does specify to some extent how much power in watts can be supplied to a device, there's no guideline stating that there is a minimum that must be delivered. As a result, there are currently a lot of USB-C cables on the market that let you charge your smartphone or laptop with, say, up to 100 watts, but almost all of them use the ancient USB 2.0 standard. So you can charge quickly, but as soon as you want to transfer data, you better have a cup of coffee ready. On the other hand, there are USB-C cables out there that meet the USB 3.2 standard and enable lightning-fast data transfer for your external SSD or camera, but only deliver a few watts when charging. But why is that? The short answer: for cost reasons. USB 2.0 cables are cheaper to produce. They require fewer data lines and less shielding, yet can still deliver 100 watt of charging power. USB 3.2 cables, on the other hand, feature exactly this shielding and additional data lines, and sometimes even a so-called eMarket chip. This chip basically recognizes the connected hardware and makes sure that the device receives only the charging power it can handle. In addition, USB-C cables, starting with USB 3.2, can also transmit video signals, which is why they are more expensive. However, since manufacturers generally assume that people using a fast data cable are less likely to use it for charging their devices, they cut corners on the charging capabilities. You can see this with similar cables on Amazon as well. With many 100 watt charging cables, you have to read the fine print to see that they only support the USB 2.0 standard. Most of the time, USB 2 isn't even mentioned. It just states something like 480 megabits per second in the description, because most people cannot use this information to judge if it is good or bad. The same applies, by the way, to other devices such as card readers. If you buy one of those cheap multi-card reader from a no-name brand, you can practically bet that it only transfers data via USB 2, again, which is very slow. Just make sure it's at least a USB 3.0 device or that the transfer speed is specified as at least 5 gigabit per second. If you want a cable that can do both, you probably have to spend more money. But it's not just the features that affect the price here, the length does too. Since the signal quality falls off rapidly inside the cable, it requires special shielding, and the length accordingly drives up the cost. Still, you usually run out of cable pretty quickly. You can easily get a 5 meter or a 16-foot USB 2.0 cable that supports 100 watt, but with a USB 3.2 or even USB 4 cable offering the full 20 gigabit per second, the most options end after just 1 meter or 3 foot. At least the trustworthy ones. Things get really interesting if, for example, you're using a smartphone from a Chinese manufacturer like Honor, Oppo, Vivo or Xiaomi. Basically, every manufacturer uses its own charging technology, from SuperVOOC to flash charge to hypercharge and so on, where the full charging power of 80 to 125 watt can only be achieved by using the manufacturer's own power adapters. Although the widely used power delivery standard, also known as PD, exists, manufacturers prefer to use their own technology. So if you use a 100 watt power delivery charger from, say, Anker or Ugreen, you won't achieve the full charging power. In most cases, the power is significantly lower. Instead of 80 to 125 watts, you'll get 20 to 40 watts. Fortunately, cables that can do both, charge quickly and also transfer data fast, are becoming more and more affordable. But make sure to buy from a well-known brand. That's because many products from unknown brands claim to meet the standards, but in real-world testing they fall short and don't even come close to delivering the promised performance. So be careful when you buy a USB-C cable.